Imagine this. It's 3:11 a.m. The room is still. The city sleeps. Even the crickets have given up their song. But your mind is a screaming cathedral of what-ifs, looping regrets, unfinished conversations, future catastrophes that haven't happened yet. You roll onto your side. You try to breathe slower. You try to remember the meditations, the breathing exercises, the podcasts that promised peace. Still, your mind won't stop eating itself. A conversation from 5 years ago replays, a text message you sent yesterday, a decision you never made. They arrive uninvited like ghosts, not to haunt, but to gnaw. Why did I say that? What if I fail tomorrow? What does she think of me now? And then comes the worst part. You know you're doing it. You know you're overthinking, and yet you can't stop. This is not confusion. This is not analysis. This is self-cannibalization dressed up in logic's clothing. The more you try to think your way out, the deeper you sink in. You are both prisoner and warden, victim and perpetrator. Your thoughts swarm like bees, but there's no queen, no hive, just static. Now zoom out. Imagine a world full of people, billions, each locked in their own invisible storm, sitting at dinner but lost in inner monologues, walking through life while rewinding the past, fast-forwarding the future, narrating their every move like paranoid philosophers. We are surrounded by people who look calm but are burning with mental noise, people who can't make decisions, people who mistake worrying for preparing, people who confuse obsession for care. We are the most connected society in history, yet lonelier than ever. We have more knowledge than any generation before us, yet we drown in doubt. We preach mindfulness, yet run marathons inside our skulls every night. Our minds are warehouses of what-ifs, our hearts are abandoned storefronts, and our souls, they're Joe, who is trying to breathe. But here's the strangest part of all. You think that by thinking more, you'll finally be free. That if you can just analyze this conversation enough, if you can predict every possible outcome, if you can imagine all the ways it could go wrong, you'll prevent pain. If you can prepare enough, calculate enough, think hard enough, you'll be safe. But you're not safe, are you? You're tired, you're wired, you're spinning, and the more you think, the less you live. So here's the great paradox. You overthink to gain control, but the more you think, the more control you lose. Where does this spiral begin? Why can't you just let go? Why does your mind cling to worst-case scenarios, dissect every look, replay every word? Is it trauma, fear, ego, or is there something deeper, something ancient, embedded in the architecture of the human psyche? And what if overthinking isn't just a personal flaw, but a systemic condition, a disease of modern civilization, a symptom of something we've built but can no longer escape? What if the culture, the schools, the systems, have all trained us to fear the silence, to believe that thinking is survival and stillness is death? What if the very way you think was never truly yours? You weren't born this way. You didn't come into the world analyzing yourself. You learned this. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that the mind is a weapon and the world is a threat. And now, you wield your own mind against yourself. So ask yourself this: what would you be without this noise? What would remain if the voices went quiet? Would you be free, or would you feel lost? Maybe that's the real fear. Not that the mind won't stop, but that if it stopped, you wouldn't know who you are anymore. You've built an identity out of thought. But what if that identity is the cage? What if the key isn't more thinking, but something else? Entirely? Something older than logic, deeper than language. Something terrifying to the modern mind: surrender. But we're not ready for that yet. First, we have to uncover the enemy. Not the mind itself, but what lives inside it. The parasite beneath the surface, the voice that's not really yours, the root system that keeps growing every time you try to cut the branches. Let's go deeper. Let's dig where it hurts. Because understanding this isn't just about peace, it's about survival. It's about remembering who you were before the spiral began. And it starts by exposing the lie that built the overthinking mind. Ready? To understand why you can't stop overthinking, you must go deeper than habit, deeper than personality, even deeper than trauma. You have to descend into the architecture of the human psyche, into the ancestral basement where fear, identity, and meaning were first born. Because overthinking isn't a quirk, it's a symptom, a byproduct of a far more ancient conflict, the war between control and chaos. And like all wars, it began with fear. Carl Jung once wrote that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that's exactly what the overthinking mind does. It builds a fortress of thoughts so it never has to feel the abyss. Because to sit with raw experience, without a narrative, without protection, without labels, that is existential terror. And so, the mind thinks, and thinks, and thinks, to avoid being. But here's the core illusion. You think you overthink to understand, but what if you actually overthink to avoid? Avoid the silence, avoid the truth, avoid the uncontrollable. Overthinking becomes a ritual of resistance, a way of covering the unbearable mystery of existence with 1,000 tiny certainties. What if they don't love me? What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? Each question feels like progress, but it's not. It's avoidance dressed as introspection. Let's call this what it truly is: psychic distraction. Jean-Paul Sartre warned us that human beings are condemned to be free, that we're born without inherent meaning, without direction, and that we must create it ourselves. But freedom terrifies the overthinking mind, because freedom means responsibility. Freedom means surrender. Freedom means accepting that control is mostly an illusion, so the mind builds cages out of thought. I can't decide. I need more time. What if I choose wrong? The more choices we're given, the more we fear making one. And this is where modern life adds fuel to the fire. In the past, a human being might have had a handful of possible futures. Now, we are sold 1,000 identities before breakfast. Be more productive, be more spiritual, be a digital nomad, be a high achiever, fix your gut, fix your brand, fix your childhood wounds. Modernity whispers, you can be anything. But the shadow of that freedom screams, so why aren't you everything yet? Arthur Schopenhauer called it the will to life, an endless striving embedded in our very biology. We crave, we desire, we seek, but never settle, never rest. And so the modern mind, overstimulated, overfed, and yet emotionally starved, turns inward and begins to eat itself. Thought becomes addiction, reflection becomes obsession, self-awareness becomes self-doubt, and the society that shaped you, it thrives on your uncertainty. Social media algorithms reward doubt, not certainty. Advertising survives by keeping you restless, insecure, and half-complete. Entire industries profit off your inability to sit with silence. No one sells you peace. They sell you tools to chase peace. And so, overthinking becomes your default mode, because in a world that monetizes your anxiety, thinking more feels like the responsible thing to do. Now let's bring in Jung again, because this is where the shadow comes in. The shadow is everything you can not accept about yourself. The fear, the guilt, the rage, the impulses you bury beneath politeness and performance. But the shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It festers, and it speaks, in riddles, in panic, in intrusive thoughts at 2 a.m. When you overthink, part of what's happening is that your conscious mind is trying to manage the shadow. It wants to stay in control. It wants to explain everything so it doesn't have to feel anything. But the shadow doesn't want to be explained. It wants to be seen. And until you look into it, truly look, it will keep whispering through your endless loops. Here's the truth most never face. Overthinking isn't a failure of logic. It's a failure of trust. You don't trust life. You don't trust yourself. You don't trust that things will unfold, that mistakes can be survived, that feelings can be felt without needing a reason. You want guarantees. You want insurance policies against pain. You want to think so well, so precisely, that you never have to suffer again. But life doesn't offer that kind of safety. It never has. And here lies the philosophical paradox. The more you try to think your way to peace, the more you reinforce the belief that peace must be earned through thought. But what if peace isn't something to get to? What if peace is what arises when you finally stop running? What if every loop, every spiral, every mental rehearsal was just your soul begging you to stop trying to explain the fire and simply walk through it? But we're not there yet. We're still in the maze. And before you can escape it, you have to see how it shapes your life, not just internally, but externally. In your relationships, your work, your identity, in your entire perception of reality. You need to understand what this parasite costs you. Let's turn to that now, because once you see the true price of overthinking, you'll never be able to unsee it again. You think overthinking is harmless, a nuisance maybe, a habit you picked up, an annoying glitch in your otherwise rational brain. But what if it's far more dangerous than that? What if overthinking is shaping your entire reality, subtly, silently, like a virus embedded in the source code of your life? What if every opportunity you've missed, every relationship that decayed, every version of yourself you never became, wasn't because you weren't capable, but because your mind talked you out of it? Let's begin with a simple truth. Your thoughts don't just describe reality, they create it. The more you think something, the more you believe it. The more you believe it, the more you filter the world to match that belief. And the more the world seems to confirm it, the deeper the belief becomes. This is known as confirmation bias, a trick of the brain that makes us see only what we expect. So, if you think you're not good enough, guess what? You'll find reasons. You'll see the raised eyebrow as disapproval. You'll hear the silence as rejection. You'll take the compliment as pity. Not because it's true, but because your mind needs it to be, because even painful certainty is safer than the unknown. Now imagine what that does over time. One fearful thought, repeated often enough, becomes a lens. A lens becomes a worldview, and a worldview becomes a prison. That's the true consequence of overthinking. It locks you inside a reality where nothing ever changes, because your mind won't let it. You second-guess your desires until you forget what they were. You rehearse conversations that never happen. You plan for disasters that never arrive. You study yourself like a problem to be solved, and in doing so, you become the problem. You split yourself into observer and observed. You never just act. You monitor yourself acting. This is the birth of self-alienation. You become a stranger to your own life. You don't live your moments. You comment on them. From the inside, you don't just walk through the forest, you narrate your own footsteps, wondering how they'll sound in someone else's ears. And the saddest part, this inner voice, the critic, the doubter, the analyst, it's not even yours. It's an echo of the teacher who demanded perfection, of the parent who withheld love until you performed, of the culture that told you to be extraordinary or be invisible. So now, you can't rest, you can't decide. You can't trust your own instincts, because the voice inside always needs more data. But that voice was built by fear, and fear is never satisfied. It keeps you in motion, but never progress. You move, but don't arrive. You think, but don't grow. And in the silence between your thoughts, a quieter part of you weeps, the part that remembers what it felt like to trust, to play, to choose without justifying, to be. But now you live in a different world. A world that rewards the mind, but punishes the soul. And here's how society amplifies the damage. Modern culture doesn't just tolerate overthinking, it encourages it. We live in the age of analysis. Every decision must be optimized, every emotion explained, every day a productivity algorithm. You don't eat without wondering if it's clean enough. You don't rest without feeling guilty. You don't even feel sad without trying to diagnose yourself. Everything becomes a loop of self-surveillance. And the algorithms, they know this. Social media feeds you what it thinks you want, based on the fears you've been feeding it. If you click on anxiety content, it gives you more. If you search for how to stop overthinking, you're shown 1,000 other things to worry about. It's not a conspiracy, it's a mirror. A reflection of the mental habits you've rehearsed so often, they've become your fingerprint. And the result? You live in a self-created simulation, a filtered world where danger is everywhere, clarity is impossible, and peace is always almost within reach, but never quite. This isn't just personal, it was epidemic. We now raise generations of people afraid to make decisions without a tutorial, afraid to sit in silence without a screen, afraid to be wrong, because they've confused being wrong with being unworthy. And slowly, without noticing, we trade our agency for certainty. We trade our instincts for instruction. We trade our souls for strategy. But here's the cruelest irony. Overthinking promises to protect you, but it actually exposes you, because while your mind spins in circles, life moves forward, and you miss it. The love you never claimed, the book you never wrote, the apology you never gave, the version of yourself you never became, because you were too busy analyzing the risks of becoming her. The cost isn't just lost time, it's a life unlived, and you know it. You feel it in your bones, that quiet ache in the middle of the night. It's not just anxiety, it's grief. Grief for the moments you abandoned, grief for the truths you silenced, grief for the life you know you could be living if only you could stop thinking long enough to begin. But don't look away. This grief is sacred. It's not here to punish you, it's here to wake you, because when you feel the weight of what's been lost, you also begin to see what can still be claimed. You begin to hear the whisper beneath the noise, the one voice you've ignored the longest, your own. And it's asking, are you ready to stop spinning? Are you ready to walk out of the maze? Because the door is open. But first, you must become the kind of person who dares to walk through it. Let's begin the rebellion. You've lived in the maze long enough. You know its walls. You've traced them with your thoughts, carved your initials into its corners, made a home out of hesitation. But now, it's time to rebel. Not by thinking your way out, but by choosing something far more radical. Stillness. Because here's the truth they never told you. The opposite of overthinking isn't more thinking, it's trust, it's presence, it's surrender. Not the passive kind, not apathy, but the fierce, intentional choice to stop being a prisoner of your own mind. And that begins with a single terrifying act: let go of needing to know. Most people never do. They spend their lives trying to predict, prevent, control, but no matter how many plans they make, life doesn't ask for their permission. It floods them with change anyway. So the rebellion begins when you stop trying to know the outcome and start learning to live without needing it. This doesn't mean you give up on thinking altogether. Thought is a tool, it's just not meant to be the master. Start here. When your mind begins its familiar spiral, try something wild. Pause. Don't follow the next thought. Don't argue with it. Don't try to outthink it. Just sit with it. Like a guest you didn't invite but won't kick out. Let it pass. Let it burn. Let it scream. Let it say whatever it wants. But don't believe it. Your thoughts are not facts. Your fears are not prophecies. Your overthinking is not a divine signal. It's just noise, habitual, ancient, and loud. So instead of fighting it, witness it. This is the essence of mindfulness, not the watered-down corporate kind that makes you more productive, but the original kind, the kind that says, be here now, even if now is uncomfortable, because when you stop running, the monster shrinks. But presence alone is not enough. You also need to reclaim what overthinking stole from you: your instinct, your will, your courage to move. So start making small, irreversible decisions. Don't just think about calling them. Call. Don't just plan the trip. Book it. Don't just imagine the new version of yourself. Embody her in one tiny, rebellious act. You've been tricked into believing you need clarity before you act. But what if action is what gives you clarity? Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "A thought, even a pose, stability can shatter us and transform us." And that's the point. You don't need certainty, you need movement. And every time you move in defiance of your doubt, you rewrite the script. You create a new neural path. You signal to your brain, I don't need to know the ending, I'm alive right now. And that's the greatest rebellion of all. But how do you sustain it? You build rituals that honor embodiment over analysis. Go for long walks without headphones. Take cold showers. Do something physical every day that has no goal other than presence. Speak your fears aloud, then laugh at them. Journal without editing. Let the ugly come out. Reclaim the animal in you, the part that feels before it speaks, the part that doesn't need a 5-step plan to leap. Now, let's go deeper. Ask yourself, who would I be without my overthinking? Not in a vague, dreamy way, in a concrete, vivid, dangerous way. What decisions would you make? What relationships would you end or begin? What would you create if your fear of judgment disappeared? This is where the real war begins. Because when you stop overthinking, you can no longer blame your mind. You can no longer say, "I'm not sure." You can no longer hide behind analysis. You must take responsibility for your becoming. And that is terrifying. But it's also sacred. Because for the first time in your life, you stop outsourcing your identity to your thoughts. You begin to live from the inside out, not the outside in. And when you do that, something ancient awakens in you. Not perfection, not constant peace, but a deeper pulse, a presence beneath the noise. This is your self, not the ego, not the performance, the self that Jung described, the whole of you, the wise part that watches your thoughts without becoming them, the seed of soul that has waited your entire life for you to wake up and say, enough. Enough of the spy roles. Enough of the self-interrogation. Enough of treating your existence like a courtroom trial. You are not a mistake. You are not a problem to solve. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. And once you see that, you're free. So yes, rebel, but not with rage, with remembrance. Remember the you who existed before the loops, before the guilt, before the world convinced you that your mind was your only compass. And then walk forward, not because you're sure, but because you're alive. Let every step be a refusal to wait for clarity, a refusal to obey the voice that says you must be flawless before you begin. Let your life be the rebellion, because the most dangerous thing you can do in a world that worships thinking is to feel, to move, to trust, to act. Even when your mind begs you not to, especially then, you've been searching for answers inside your own mind. And what have you found? Loops, doubt, provisional truths that dissolve in the morning light. But now, after peeling back the layers of illusion, after walking through the maze, confronting the ghost, and choosing rebellion, there's only one place left to go. The edge, the place where all the thoughts fall away, where there are no more tools, no more theories, no more steps, just this, just you, just truth. And here it is, sharp, simple, and absolute. You are not your thoughts. You never were. That voice in your head, the one that judges, warns, analyzes, obsesses, that voice is just one small function of your consciousness. But you've mistaken it for you. You've handed it the keys. You've let it narrate your story, decide your worth, shape your destiny. But here's the deepest realization, the one that flips everything upside down. The voice in your head is not the narrator of your life. It's the echo of your conditioning, a collection of old fears, borrowed beliefs, childhood scripts, cultural noise. It sounds like reason, it sounds like logic, but most of it is just memory pretending to be insight. You've been trying to think you're you. Into becoming who you are. But the truth is, you already are. You are the silence beneath the storm, the awareness behind the words, the ocean that watches the waves come and go. You are the witness, not the noise. And when you truly see this, not just understand it, but feel it, something inside you clicks. The thoughts keep coming, but they lose their grip. The fear arises, but it doesn't define you. The questions swirl, but you stop mistaking them for who you are. You become the sky again, not the weather. And suddenly, everything softens. The need to be certain, the pressure to fix yourself, the illusion that more thought equals more freedom, gone. Because now, you know, freedom isn't the absence of thought. It's the absence of identification with thought. This is what the sages tried to tell us. This is what the mystics whispered. This is what the philosophers glimpsed in their darkest hours. It's not about escaping the mind, it's about disentangling from it. Sartre said we are condemned to be free, but maybe that condemnation is a blessing. Maybe your freedom has been here all along, waiting behind the veil of analysis, and now you see it. There was never anything wrong with you. You were never broken. You were never too much, too scattered, too obsessive. You just believed the voice. And now you've stopped believing. Now you watch it speak, and you smile. You hear it scream, and you stay still. You see it spiral, and you walk anyway. You return to what you are, beneath the thinking. Presence, awareness, love. Now. This is the truth that no one can give you, because it was always yours. You just had to lose your way enough times to remember it. And yes, the thoughts will still come. But now, you'll know. They are just weather. They pass. They do not own you. And slowly, something begins to shift in your life. Decisions become easier, not because you have perfect clarity, but because you no longer fear being wrong. Relationships deepen, not because you figured them out, but because you show up as someone who's not constantly at war with themselves. Your art flows, not because you silence all doubt, but because you act anyway, without waiting for permission from the voice. This is real power, not control, not certainty, but the unshakable knowing that you are not your mind, you are its master. So now what? Now, you live. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but freely. You let yourself feel without explanation. You let yourself act without rehearsing. You let yourself be, without proof, without polish, without the need to justify your existence with endless internal monologues. You walk into each day not as a project to be fixed, but as a presence to be expressed. And when the mind begins again, because it will, you return to the truth. I see you, I hear you, but I am not you. And with that, you return home. Because the greatest truth of all is this: you never needed to escape your mind. You only needed to remember, it's not where you live. You live here, now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this quiet knowing that beneath every storm, you are still. You are still here, still whole, still free. You always were.